It's okay. Come here.
An unsettling and terrifying scene in Louisville, Kentucky. Police rescuing a 6-year-old who had been kidnapped from the side of the road. Moments earlier, they'd taken the man accused of kidnapping her into custody. Police say the suspect admitted to them that he saw the little girl playing outside, turned his car around, and then took her from her neighborhood. Thanks to the quick 911 call by neighbors, police were able to get the girl back safe and sound in a matter of minutes. Tonight, the threat of extreme weather across the country, another deadly heat wave set to hit the West Coast as the East Coast braces for Elsa's impact. The storm plows through the Carolinas and heads toward the coast tonight. The tornado warnings and potential for high winds, heavy rain, and flash flooding. Our Ginger Z times it all out. Overseas tonight, Haiti on edge. One day after the president there was assassinated, the interim prime minister tonight calling for calm. Haiti officials say 4 suspects died in a gun battle with police, and at least 6 more are in custody. 2 U.S. citizens believed to be among them. Haiti's ambassador to the U.S. standing by to join us tonight. The announcement by President Biden to move up the withdrawal timeline in Afghanistan. Biden calls the decision overdue and now faces questions tonight about if a Taliban takeover in Afghanistan is inevitable. And Olympics like never before. Emergency COVID restrictions in Japan prompt officials to bar any fans from attending the games, which begin in 2 weeks. And it was a story that sparked a firestorm nearly a year ago. A teen thrown into juvenile detention at the height of the pandemic after not doing her homework. The girl, who goes by Grace, and her mother now speaking to cameras for the very first time with a message for the world.
Why did you decide to tell your story now?
It needs to be told because it was an injustice that should not be forgotten. It's an injustice that should never occur again.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are still 2 months away from the peak of hurricane season and not even a month into summer. And tonight, millions of Americans are dealing with extreme weather. Scientists say in part thanks to climate change. Blistering, deadly heat surpassing records and strong early season storms, putting coastal communities in some of America's largest cities on high alert tonight. Right now, Elsa is making its way up the East Coast, leaving behind a trail of tornadoes, high winds, and heavy rain. Flash flooding and strong winds are expected from D.C. to Boston. This after the system slammed the Carolinas today. Wind and rain blasting Surfside Beach in South Carolina. Far from the storm, another heat dome is expected to descend on large portions of the West Coast. This comes after hundreds of people in Oregon, Washington State, and Northwest Canada died from excessive heat just last week. Let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z, who's in New York. And Ginger, we'll get to that powerful storm in a moment, but first the potential for life-threatening heat again on the West Coast. We want to start there because heat claims more lives typically than any other weather event. When will this new heat dome once again take hold?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because it gets missed so often. It's not as flashy as some of the other natural phenomenon, but yes, heat will be a problem again. And here's where the heat dome really becomes problematic. It's not just, well, last time it was all-time records, which was just unbelievable. But this time, it's when you have heat not just during the day, but in the overnight, when you get no relief. And when a dome of high pressure comes over and sticks around for days on end, that causes something we call subsidence. It has sinking air. The molecules move quicker, and that means it's hotter. And so you end up seeing, look at this, Sacramento, the numbers, 111 on Saturday. Las Vegas will be up around 117. Remember, that's where they've always peaked. 117 is an all-time record in Vegas, so they're going to flirt with that for at least 3 days there. And then in Phoenix, staying above 110. It's when it is cumulative in the body, Lindsay, when we have the most problems with heat.
And Ginger, Elsa is now making its way up the East Coast, as we've talked about. Tornadoes are possible in some areas, and heavy rain and wind. Time this all out for us.
I mean, we've been tracking Elsa for, what, 3 days now, and we're going to be doing it for another 24 hours. So let's go ahead and start with the most imminent threat, and that would be the tornadoes. Elsa has created a tornado in every state that it has touched already, at least one. And you can see right now Virginia would be next into Maryland and eventually Delaware. And that's in the next couple of hours. The tornado watch is in place there, but time it out with me here because I want you to see the wind gusts, which are significant, 20 to maybe 40 miles per hour or so. You can see at 5 a.m. Belmar, New York City will be gusting to 30 or so. But I think it's really going to be the rain. We just had these really heavy thunderstorms blow through here. At my house, my personal weather station, we had almost 3 inches in 3 hours. When you add all of the rain that's coming tomorrow, we're going to have big-time water problems on the roads. Providence to Boston, up to even Maine, will be dealing with it from the lunch hour through the evening commute, and then we finally will say goodbye to Elsa.
It does sound like some flooding might be problematic before Elsa's departure. Elsa is also an early season storm. We still have 2 months to go until peak Atlantic hurricane season. Just today, Colorado State University updated its hurricane forecast for the season, as you know. And let's just say that we may be in for a number of significant storms this season, it seems like.
Yeah, it's not what anyone wants to see, but it certainly makes a lot of scientific sense. So Colorado State University's Philip Klotzbach, it's a doctor of hurricanes, essentially. He's somebody you should follow on Twitter if you love hurricanes, because he puts out amazing historical statistics. He and I spoke, and we talked about the numbers, which have all been upped a bit from where they started the season. Yes, we're a month in. They anticipate of named storms 20. Remember, we've already done 5, so that means 15 more named storms. Hurricanes, which Elsa was a hurricane, so we'll see 8 more from here. And then major hurricanes, we anticipate 4 through Colorado State's new predictions. And there are a few reasons why this is happening. Sea surface temperatures being one of them, especially in the western Atlantic. The lack of an El Nino, which is something that can kind of cut down with wind shear the tops. We're not going to have that. It looks very, very unlikely. And then on top of all of this, we just have the driving factors in place, right? And the steering factors. That's where people would love for us to be able to say, okay, so you know there's going to be a lot of them in the Atlantic basin. Will there be a lot for Florida? That we're not there yet, but I think that looking at least the numbers and knowing that there's a lot of energy to be had out in the Atlantic gives us a little heads up to say, prepare yourself for this summer.
Right, a little bit of a reason for concern. Ginger Z, thanks so much as always.
Thank you.
And once again, to recap, we've been talking about Elsa quickly moving its way up the East Coast tonight, expected to potentially cause massive problems in the Northeast by morning. And it's already left behind a long trail of damage. ABC's Gio Benitez reports.
There's a tornado right there.
After battering Florida, tonight Elsa is churning its way up the I-95 corridor. Today, the system gaining strength over the Carolinas. Outside Charleston, first responders racing to clear trees from the only road into Edisto Island. And overnight in Camden County, Georgia.
It is utter chaos.
Elsa spawning an EF2 tornado, flipping trailers at the East Coast hub for the Navy's fleet of nuclear submarines.
Debris everywhere.
I come out and there's guys pushing his kids out the top door over here.
9 people, including a pregnant woman, were hurt. And the tornado that touched down in Jacksonville caught on surveillance camera. 110-mile-per-hour winds destroying everything.
This power line right here came down and hit right on this fence and went ba-boom.
1 person in Jacksonville killed by a falling tree. And as the Northeast prepares for Elsa, for the 3rd day in a row, powerful severe thunderstorms slammed the region, rainwater pouring into this subway station in New York City.
So many concerns about flooding overnight. Our thanks to Gio for that. And we shift now to the ongoing chaos in Haiti after the assassination of their president. Officials announcing 4 suspected assailants killed and 6 arrested, some of them believed to be U.S. citizens. The interim prime minister vowing that the president's murder will not go unpunished. ABC's Marcus Moore brings us this report.
Tonight, an all-out hunt for the killers of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. Police arresting these 2 men, placing them in the back of a pickup truck surrounded by an angry crowd. Outside a local police station, Haitians burning tires and pickup trucks, demanding justice. Authorities say they killed 4 people connected to the assassination in a gun battle. At least 6 others now under arrest, and we know 2 are Americans. One of them, James Solage, who lives near Fort Lauderdale. His alleged role still unclear. Today, Haiti's acting prime minister with this message, quote, "This barbaric act is not going unpunished." And new details tonight are emerging of the brutal attack. Video showing armed men outside the president's home before the assassination. Local media reports they tied up a maid and 1 other household worker before storming the president's bedroom, shooting him 12 times. First Lady suffered 3 gunshot wounds. Our affiliate WPLG capturing these images of her arriving at a Miami hospital for life-saving treatment. The assassination has left a vulnerable nation without a leader. The White House tonight saying it stands with the people of Haiti.
We want to provide assistance, whether that is assistance requested by the government or assistance that is needed for the people of the country to prosper in the future.
Marcus Moore joins us from outside the Miami hospital where Haiti's First Lady is currently fighting for her life. And Marcus, what are you learning about the two Americans under arrest tonight?
Lindsay, we have learned that James Solange, one of the Americans who was arrested, is from Fort Lauderdale, according to authorities. And we have also learned through from the Associated Press, through their reporting, that one of the Americans also worked as a security guard at the Canadian Embassy in Port-au-Prince. But Lindsay, tonight there is still no word on a motive for the attack that happened on Wednesday.
Marcus Moore, our thanks to you. Joining us now for more on the ongoing state of siege in Haiti is Haiti's ambassador to the U.S., Boshit Edmond. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Obviously, one of the biggest, of course, we appreciate you talking with us. Of course, one of the biggest headlines out of there today is that there may be 2 U.S. citizens among the 6 individuals who were detained in connection with President Moïse's assassination. The State Department is not commenting on the arrest, but have Haitian authorities been in touch with anyone from the U.S. government about these suspects?
We certainly believe that there have been some contacts made with the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince. I believe the national police, the investigators, they are working closely with them. And so since those 2 have been identified as U.S. citizens, I strongly believe that they would have been immediately contacted the embassy.
How surprised were you to learn that there were Americans among the suspected assailants? Do you have any idea of the nationalities of the other suspects?
The national police, the investigators, they are still working on that to identify the nationalities of those in captivity, those in custody. Hopefully we know the truth will come out after those investigations, because to us, not only we still under shock, but it is like something unimaginable. We never thought that we would have lived up time to see our president to be assassinated that way.
And I imagine a shock to potentially know that Americans may have had some hand in that.
Yeah. So, there might be, those 2 might be U.S. citizens, but the most important thing we believe, our friendship with the United States as one of our greatest allies, those kind of issues cannot threaten those kind of relations. We'll continue to work with the American authorities and to make sure that everything is done properly, and then those will be pushed by the justice. And because we want to bring them to the justice system, they have to respond for what they have committed.
And as far as those who have to be held accountable, what led Haitian authorities to the group that was killed and captured? How do you know that you have the right people?
I believe the investigators, they have really very good information. They are still working on them. So we trust them. We trust our investigators. We believe that those people, they are foreign nationals, and they have some ideas when they came in. And so I believe the investigation process will reveal all those steps, how they came into the country, who are behind this kind of events, and who paid them, because it seems to me there are some international mercenaries. So they got paid to do the job. So we will discover all those details.
And earlier today, the interim prime minister said that there are mobs looking for more people involved in trying to take justice into their own hands. Yet at the same time, he's assuring the public that police and army have the situation under control. How can the people of Haiti feel like anything is under control amidst such chaos?
This is understandable. This is not what we want, but this is understandable. The fact that they know their president has been killed, assassinated that way, and every city and every country. It's almost unstoppable to talk to the people, to express their anger. But the most important thing, as the Prime Minister said, we're calling on the people to keep their calm and to let the police, the national police investigators, do their job, and hopefully they will be brought to justice, and the truth will be revealed.
In other interviews, you've mentioned that the assassins had internal help. Do you have any idea who might have been behind this, who may have been able to give access to the residence of the president?
I believe the investigation, as I told you, the investigation will reveal those details. Indeed, it is obvious. Those foreign nationals enter the country. To some extent, they should have had some internal help, even logistically, to have all those vehicles to the president's home. I strongly believe they were helped by some internal group.
And lastly, do you have any update on the condition of the First Lady there?
The First Lady is making a little step. We do hope those little steps will getting bigger every day. She went to surgery, and I believe now she's trying to recover. And even though it's going to be a long battle, a long fight, but we still keep her in our prayers and to make sure that she has a speedy recovery.
Glad to hear that she is improving. Ambassador Boshida Edmond, we thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to your country during this time.
Thank you so very much.
Now to America's exit strategy in Afghanistan. President Biden revealed today at the White House a revised timeline saying that Americans' military role in the country will end August 31st. But what comes next for the war-torn nation? And does Biden believe a Taliban takeover of the country is inevitable? Rachel Scott reports.
Today, President Biden declaring the military mission in Afghanistan will end on August 31st, saying it's not in America's interest to keep fighting the nearly 20-year war.
The status quo was not an option. Staying would have meant U.S. troops taking casualties. American men and women back in the middle of a civil war.
The president pushing back on those who say he's moving too fast.
How many thousands more Americans' daughters and sons were you willing to risk? Would you send your own son or daughter? I will not send another generation of Americans to war in Afghanistan with no reasonable expectation of achieving a different outcome.
Biden says Afghans control their own destiny.
We did not go to Afghanistan to nation build. And it's the right and the responsibility of the Afghan people alone to decide their future and how they want to run their country.
But the Taliban is gaining ground. More than a third of the country's districts now in their control.
If Kabul falls to the Taliban, what will the United States do about it?
The question is, how much of a threat to the United States of America and to our allies is whatever results in terms of a government or an agreement? That's when that judgment will be made.
Biden was emphatic.
Mr. President, will the United States be responsible for the loss of Afghan civilian lives that could happen after the military exit?
No, no, no. It's up to the people of Afghanistan to decide on what government they want, not us to impose the government on them.
And even as he brings an end to America's longest war, the president insisting...
No, there's no mission accomplished. The mission was accomplished in that we got Osama bin Laden, and terrorism is not emanating from that part of the world.
Our thanks to Rachel Scott for that. One of President Biden's top priorities in Washington is now getting another push. Today, Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris met with civil rights leaders to discuss the future of voting rights. It comes as efforts by Democrats have hit a roadblock in their efforts to combat a growing number of restrictive voting laws across the country. ABC's Faith Abube has the latest.
Vice President Kamala Harris announcing Thursday the Democratic National Committee's plans to invest an additional $25 million in its I Will Vote initiative.
This campaign is grounded in the firm belief that everyone's vote matters.
According to the nonpartisan Brennan Center for Justice, since the 2020 elections, lawmakers in 17 mostly GOP-led states have already enacted 28 new laws that, at least in part, restrict voters' access to the polls. In Texas, a controversial effort to curb weekend and drive-through voting, among other things, failed in dramatic fashion in May. Democrats walking out, effectively killing the legislation. But Thursday, Texas lawmakers gavelled back in. Governor Greg Abbott forcing the 30-day special session to restart the process on what he calls election security. In the last week, more blows to Democrats. The U.S. Supreme Court upholding Arizona's new voting laws. Pressure building on President Biden to do more as Democrats struggle to move voting rights bills through Congress.
The president would love to sign a piece of voting rights legislation into law. He looks forward to doing that. But he also knows that there are a number of levers from the federal government that we should continue to use.
Thursday, the president strategizing in a private meeting with civil rights leaders and other administration officials.
Our thanks to Faith for that. And for more on the battle over voting rights, we bring in ABC's political director, Rick Klein. Rick, thanks for joining us as usual. Faith reported on that $25 million I Will Vote initiative. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, Lindsay, this is money that the Democratic National Committee is going to put toward voter education, voter registration, also legal efforts, which could be critical in this fight to try to combat what they see as Republican efforts to disenfranchise people. But the key thing to think about through all of this, Lindsay, is this is essentially playing under the current rules at the same time that Republicans are working to change those rules in so many states. So they're going to basically be trying to tread water here at best as Democrats and try to get the word out that, yes, it's going to be different when you vote in many, many states next year.
And President Biden has repeatedly said that it's critical to make voting easier and to stop efforts that make voting harder. But it doesn't look like Democrats can get a federal voting rights bill through Congress, at least not anytime soon. So what can the president really do realistically on this issue at this point?
Probably the biggest thing is empowering his Justice Department, as he has done. But we saw with that Supreme Court ruling just a week ago that there are fewer tools that are going to be available to federal authorities to try to enforce old laws like the Voting Rights Act. It was essentially gutted by the Supreme Court. So that means that the Justice Department, when it challenges a state law, it's going to have a precedent now that's working against it. It's going to be that much harder for them to get that thrown out. Short of that, it really is the megaphone. And we heard that from civil rights leaders who were at the White House today. They want to see President Biden speak about this more forcefully, more regularly, continue to exert pressure, not give up. There still are legislative solutions that could pass, even if they aren't as sweeping as the big bill that was passed in the House and that some senators want. There aren't Democratic votes for that now, but the hope among some advocates is that by President Biden continuing to talk about this, by continuing to keep that bully pulpit at a pretty loud volume, that you may be able to change some of the politics around this and be able to pass something while Democrats control Congress.
And what can you tell us about the current situation going on in Texas right now?
Yeah, the Texas legislature is now back in session. We remember when Democrats forced the Republicans to convene through a walkout without moving any new legislation. But the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who is a pretty strong Trump supporter, he's been endorsed by Trump, and he's got a tough re-election race on his hands. He's called a special session of the legislature that reads like a conservative wish list. And item 1 on that agenda, according to lawmakers there, is what they're calling election integrity. They're going to try to take up this bill. They'll probably be moving through this weekend to try to craft what will be a pretty restrictive new law around how to access the ballot box in Texas.
Rick Klein, thank you so much as always.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And when we come back, the baseball coach and father shot and killed while driving on a highway in Minnesota. Disgraced attorney Michael Avenatti is sentenced by a federal judge, prompting him to cry in court. How long will he be behind bars? But up next, her story made national headlines. The black teenage girl sent to juvenile detention for not doing her homework. Tonight, she's speaking exclusively with us about her case and what she's doing to try to prevent it from happening again. Stay with us.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show, ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues, the hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
Squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
Tomorrow on GMA3, our friends will be speaking with Gwen Levy. She's the 76-year-old grandmother who was sent back to jail after she missed a phone call from officials while attending a computer class. She was released after a judge's decision to grant her compassionate release after serving 16 years for a drug conspiracy conviction. Her attorney hopes that her case will bring about systemic change and that people will stop going to jail on technicalities. Similarly, our next story was based on such a technicality. Here on ABC News Live, our show keeps a close eye on the criminal justice system and its fairness or perceived lack thereof. Last year, you may recall the story of a teenage girl. She goes by Grace. And she was sent to juvenile detention because she did not do her homework. I recently traveled to Michigan, and in an exclusive interview with us, Grace and her mother are now speaking out. They say what happened to them would not have happened if Grace was not Black. These letters of support represent a bright spot that helped carry this mother and daughter through the darkest of times, a period that was so difficult they asked us to not reveal their faces, yet want their voices to be heard.
Well, my favorite one is the first letter that I received from her.
But one in particular stands out for Grace, the first letter she wrote to her mom, Cherise, from juvenile detention, where she was sent for failing to do her homework.
Dear Mommy, I miss you a lot and being here is hard. I haven't really wrote you because I had to ask God to give me the strength to do so. I couldn't write without crying or feeling bad for the rest of the day.
Please continue to send me pictures of me and you or just with anyone. I love you, Mommy, and I miss you. Love, Grace.
Reading those words brings Cherise right back to this painful moment when Grace, just 15 years old at the time, was sent back to juvenile detention after her appeal, forced out of her mother's arms once again.
I was like, no, I can't go back. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna do if I go back.
To help protect her privacy, she goes by her middle name, Grace. And many say Grace is something she was not granted as she sat inside a cell for 78 days. What was the hardest part in all of this for you?
The hardest part for me was definitely being away from my child. Another hard part was understanding how this was helping the situation.
Grace's incarceration made international headlines.
A Michigan judge who has been criticized for placing a 15-year-old Black girl in juvenile facility after she failed to do her homework.
I mean, it's crystal clear at this point that this system is set up to punish people rather than help them.
All of the attention was the result of an in-depth report by ProPublica.
This was a student with disabilities who was struggling with the remote learning situation and ended up in detention because of that.
My daughter was penalized because of having a learning disability, which is her chronic ADHD.
Free Grace! Free Grace!
Her story sparked outrage from celebrities to lawmakers who called it racist, suggesting that even in the midst of a pandemic, the school-to-prison pipeline remained wide open for Black students.
In Oakland County, where Grace and her family live, there are 15% of the youth in Oakland County are Black. The youth who are referred to Oakland County Court, 42% of them are Black. The kids who are going into the court system, it's very disproportionate to the reality of who lives in that county.
Why did you decide to tell your story now?
It needs to be told because it was an injustice that should not be forgotten. It's an injustice that should never occur again.
The road that led to what she calls an injustice is long and winding. Grace's interactions with law enforcement started when she was barely a preteen. And why did you decide that it was appropriate to get the police involved on a few occasions?
I like to say to teach her a lesson, but with the aggression, the more I exercised control with her, the more she resented it.
And in November of 2019, things escalated. Grace bit her mother's finger and pulled her hair after not being allowed to go to a friend's house. Weeks later, she stole a schoolmate's cell phone after her mother took hers away. But experts say this kind of behavior is not uncommon in teens.
The kinds of behaviors that Grace exhibited are very normal of kids. Part of adolescence is testing the limits, and part of adolescence is not having the brain functioning to understand, gee, if I do that, it's going to get me in trouble.
Grace was charged with assault and larceny for her actions.
I knew that there were going to be consequences, but I didn't think it would go to the level that it did, obviously.
Do you feel that things got to the level they did because you're Black?
Actually, I think that was a huge part of it.
Some people are going to say, but if you're charged with assault and theft, how is that a racial issue?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be punished if you're white or if you're Black.
If a white girl were to steal the phone and has the same history as me, same background, same everything, besides the fact that she's white, they would probably look at her and say, hey, you know, you're not brought up like this. But for me, I feel like it was more of a, oh, okay, well, this is what we expect from Black people.
Black girls are 4 times more likely than white girls to face suspension and expulsion, and are 5.3 times more likely to be transferred to an alternative school for disciplinary reasons. I don't think that Grace is very far off when she says that had she been a white girl, that the white adults in her life would have said, you know better than to do this. Don't do this.
Grace was ultimately put on intensive probation in April of last year. One of the terms of the arrangement was to complete all of her school assignments. Your school goes online, start working virtually, and how was that transition for you?
It was just overwhelming and kind of anxious. I was very anxious.
She was set up to fail in an environment where she wouldn't thrive.
Grace was set up with a caseworker who Sharice believed would help keep her on track with her requirements. And you didn't get the help that you thought?
No, I got a violation. That's what I got.
Within days, the caseworker referred Grace to the court, recommending she be put in juvenile detention for the violation, according to ProPublica, which reviewed case documents. ABC News reached out to Oakland County Court's Family Division for comment and did not receive a response. As a result of the pandemic, Michigan's governor ordered juveniles be kept out of detention unless they posed a substantial and immediate safety risk to others. Grace was brought before Judge Mary Ellen Brennan on May 14th. Brennan called Grace a threat to the community. Do you feel that at any point you've been a threat to the community?
No, because if we called every person who's taken something or every person who's got an argument with their mom a threat to the community, I'm pretty sure everybody would be a threat to the community.
Brennan ordered the 15-year-old be taken into custody and sent to a county detention center called Children's Village.
They never get any testimony from the school and or the teacher, anybody involved with her education. They get testimony from the probation officer, the prosecutor, and the judge makes her decision based on that testimony.
Grace was handcuffed
and immediately taken into custody.
What was your reaction when you see your daughter, your only child, getting handcuffed to go behind bars?
I was devastated. It still haunts me, having that visual of my child being taken away from me.
Tell us about life inside the detention center.
I remember walking in the first day, and I'm like crying, like hyperventilating almost. But yeah, sleeping in a room for 12 hours a day, that was really hard. With a locked door, 7 blankets with no pillow, that was hard.
Grace's mother, desperate to get her daughter back home, started making calls.
One day last May, I got a call just on my cell phone and from a number I didn't recognize, and I answered it, and it was Grace's mom. When Grace's mom said, "My daughter is in detention because she didn't do her homework," I remember even like writing down on some scratch paper, like, detention, no homework, and I was like, it didn't sound right.
By mid-July, ProPublica published Grace's story.
It was attention that was beyond my expectations.
We immediately started to receive phone calls from all over the country. We got calls from senators, we got calls from legislators in D.C. It was amazing.
I did not know that there would be a social media movement, a hashtag Free Grace, protests.
A petition for Grace's release collected hundreds of thousands of signatures. High school students slept outside near the facility in protest. A grassroots organization led a 100-car caravan from Grace's school to the detention center. Amid mounting pressure, Judge Brennan agreed to a hearing on a motion to release Grace from detention less than 1 week after Jody's story went online.
Counsel, how many times does she get to jump her mom before you think that she's a threat of harm to her mom? How many times?
And for about 45 minutes, she went through Grace's history, going back years. The judge used that hearing to get her point of view out there on this case.
Grace pleaded with the judge.
Each day I try to be a better person than I was the last. And I've been doing that since even before I was in this situation. And I'm getting behind in my actual schooling while here. The schooling here is beneath my level of education.
But Judge Brennan concluded that Grace was exactly where she was supposed to be and denied her release.
The goal is you and mom safe, healthy, happy in the home.
We weren't going to sleep until Grace was released. Once the judge decided that she was not going to send Grace home, we knew we had to take the next step, which was to file a petition to the Court of Appeals.
11 days after that hearing, Michigan's Court of Appeals ordered Grace's immediate release. Now an honors student, Grace says she has a whole new perspective and a new hobby, taking pictures. But her greatest passion is speaking out about what she calls an injustice in the criminal justice system.
I think it's important just overall to listen to kids and teens, and just, like I said, for the judges to allow the kid to speak and have a voice.
She's even working with one of the advocacy organizations that fought for her release.
Thank you.
Just last month, Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed an executive order to create a task force on juvenile justice reform.
We have a lot of work to do to address juvenile justice in Michigan.
Grace's situation was a complete and systemic failure of our juvenile justice system. Grace deserved better.
So it says, "Dear Grace, what else can I do to support you?"
She goes on to say,
I'm
you have a
sorry.
superpower.
You're so brave.
Grace and Cherie say they're still overwhelmed by the support they received from around the world. And now Grace and her mother hope her story isn't just a cautionary tale, but a catalyst for change within her state's juvenile justice system.
There are thousands of other Graces out there, and we need to pay attention to those children. My child was criminalized because of her behavior and her ADHD. But Black girls are being criminalized just because of who they are.
Our thanks to Grace and her mother for sharing their story with us. Still ahead here on Prime, the 6-year-old screaming for her father as police body cam shows her being rescued after being kidnapped. The major move by officials in Japan tonight after weeks of speculation would finally force them to bar all fans from the Olympics. Plus, the cancer death rate across the board is down. What's behind the positive development? We go by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day, Guy Fieri paying tribute to the National Video Game Day. Yes, that is an actual day.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute. Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move out. Let's move out.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
Hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back, everyone. And now to some good news on the declining rates of cancer deaths in the United States, published today in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute. The decline held true for both men and women of all racial and ethnic groups. We take a look by the numbers. 2.3% per year. That was the decline in the overall cancer death rate for American men from 2015 to 2018. For women, the decline was 2.1% per year. Most dramatically, death rates from melanoma fell 5.7% for men and 4.4% for women from 2014 to 2018. And death rates from lung cancer fell more than 5% for men and more than 4% for women during that period. But there were a few exceptions to these positive trends. Deaths from uterus cancer rose 2%, and deaths from bone and joint cancer among men rose nearly 3%. Experts say that lowering smoking rates and targeted cancer treatments are bringing down the cancer death rate. The report also notes that while cancer deaths are dropping, cancer rates among women, children, teens, and young adults actually increased between 2014 and 2018. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. It's okay not to be okay. That's the message tonight from tennis superstar Naomi Osaka. What she wants before she considers playing tennis again. And he may be known as the ultimate tough guy, but beneath this actor's tough exterior, a life of multiple hardships. Our conversation with actor Danny Trejo. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
This is one of those stories that as you cover it for years, it just becomes more unbelievable.
911. The truck fell on my stepson.
His son dead.
You wouldn't stand a chance.
His first wife dead.
Christina was trapped inside that bathroom.
When this guy needed money, a family member would die.
Now, his daughters speak out. And was he planning on killing again?
What other reason would he have a life insurance policy out on one of his granddaughters?
It's almost impossible to believe.
The 2020 event, Friday at 9/8 Central on ABC.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues, the hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Elsa is making her way up the East Coast, threatening major cities from Washington to New York and Boston.
You can see this time-lapse video, the storm turning the skies over Manhattan pitch black. 157th Street and Broadway is literally underwater.
Tropical storm warnings now issued for the Northeast after a trail of destruction was left behind in the South.
Utter chaos over here right now.
In Camden County, Georgia, Elsa spawning an EF2 tornado, flipping trailers at the East Coast hub for the Navy's fleet of nuclear submarine. And the tornado that touched down in Jacksonville caught on surveillance camera. 110-mile-per-hour winds destroying everything.
And this is jaw-dropping. What's happening in the west coast of the United States, the heat dome that occurred in the Pacific Northwest, happened up in Canada.
California's governor urging residents and businesses to reduce their water use by 15% as the drought and extreme heat squeeze the state's water resources.
The number of Americans filing first-time jobless claims was more than 370,000. That's a slight increase from the prior week.
Stocks on Wall Street closing a turbulent trading day with sizable losses. Investors are caught between enthusiasm about the economic recovery and unease that the Fed may roll back on its stimulus efforts.
If you're looking for work, you can use TikTok to apply for a job. More than 30 companies accepting video resumes through the app. For now, it's just a pilot program.
Michael Avenatti has now been sentenced to serve time behind bars. This afternoon, a judge in Manhattan sentenced the California lawyer to 2.5 years in prison. A jury in 2020 convicted Avenatti of trying to extort up to $25 million from Nike by threatening to use his popularity to damage the company's reputation. Avenatti gained fame representing porn star Stormy Daniels in lawsuits against former President Donald Trump.
He is deeply humbled as a result of this experience.
Couldn't believe it happened to such a wonderful person.
Another senseless killing, all allegedly due to road rage, this time resulting in the death of a beloved youth baseball coach and father in Minnesota. Jay Botten and his 15-year-old son were driving home from a game Tuesday.
The suspect shot at the victim's vehicle and struck the victim driver.
Police say the other driver kept driving southbound. Botten, with his son in the car, died at the hospital.
This was one of the most tragic events that I've witnessed in my 20 years in policing.
Police are still hunting for a suspect.
There will be no fans in the stands at the Olympics. The Prime Minister announcing a state of emergency for Tokyo that will last until August 22nd. Polls show the majority of Japanese people do not want the games because of the fear of the virus spreading.
Naomi Osaka breaking her silence on her own terms. In a Time magazine essay, the tennis star opens up about prioritizing her mental health as she prepares for her first Olympics. The Japanese national writes that she stands by her decision to skip interviews in an act of self-care. Quote, "In any other line of work, you would be forgiven for taking a personal day here and there, so long as it's not habitual. You wouldn't have to divulge your most personal symptoms to your employers. There would likely be HR measures protecting at least some level of privacy." This is Osaka's first official statement since pulling out of the French Open in May. Serena Williams and Billie Jean King among the many celebrities to have voiced support for the 23-year-old.
Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, we're getting a look at body camera video of a 6-year-old girl being rescued by police after she was kidnapped. Neighbors are being recognized tonight for their quick action. Ariel Reshef reports in a warning some may find the video difficult to watch.
Open the passenger door!
Tonight, a Louisville, Kentucky little girl is safe. Her heroic rescue from an alleged kidnapper caught in this dramatic police body camera video. Officers opening the door of this red car.
Hello. It's okay.
Inside, the distraught 6-year-old in the passenger seat. The suspect, 40-year-old Robbie Wilt.
Get on your knees.
Arrested, charged with kidnapping a minor. Police say he told them he took the little girl while she was riding her bike outside her home.
Grabbed her by the collar, slung her around, and threw the bike.
Prentice Weatherford says he jumped in his car to follow the suspect and immediately alerted police, giving a detailed description and a partial license plate number. The terrifying ordeal lasting 30 minutes.
I never thought that I'd be, a witness to something like that.
Police say thankfully that little girl was unharmed. Tonight she is back home with her family. Authorities commending the quick thinking of that neighbor and the officers who rescued her. Lindsay?
Our thanks to Ariel for that. And we now shift our conversation with an actor who for more than 30 years has endeared himself to millions around the world as the ultimate tough guy with nearly 400 acting credits to his name. Danny Trejo has cemented his place as one of the most recognizable actors on the screen today. But beneath the tough exterior is a man who has overcome multiple hardships. In his new book, Trejo, My Life of Crime, Redemption in Hollywood, the actor opens up about his life behind bars and beyond. Danny joins us now from Los Angeles to talk more about it. Danny, welcome and congratulations on joining the cast of American Horror Story on FX on Hulu, which is also owned, I must say, by our ABC parent company.
Thank you.
As we mentioned before, throughout your career, you've become synonymous with this tough guy, don't mess with me type of character. What made you decide to come out with a book that shows a completely different side?
They did a documentary on me called Inmate Number One, and everybody thought it was because I'd been in prison. But the reality, we called it Inmate Number One because the first 5 years of my career, I played Inmate Number One, or bad guy, or mean Mexican dude, or killer. I never had a name, but I always liked Inmate Number One.
And you mentioned the first time that you got hauled off to a police station, you were only 10 years old. I remember thinking that it was 12.
About 12, yeah.
You were 12.
And, it's like, but they used to take you to police stations to scare you. But what they didn't know was the minute the fear was gone, you didn't care. First time I went to juvenile hall, I realized, okay, this ain't so bad. And I thought Mexicans were supposed to go because all that was there was Mexican Americans, poor white guys, and African Americans. That was it.
And let's talk about how you got your start into Hollywood. You were an addiction counselor, and someone from your time in prison recognized you. What happened after that?
You know what? I was working for a place called Western Pacific MedCorp in Glendale. I still work for them. As an actor, I still work for them. And we were being extras, and I was working with this one kid who had a cocaine problem, and I was kind of hanging with him, and we were on a movie set of a movie called Runaway Train, and I'm standing there, and I don't have a shirt on, a big tattoo. This guy comes up and says, "Hey, you're Danny Trejo." I said, "Yeah." And he said, I saw you win the lightweight and the welterweight title up in San Quentin. And I said, you're Eddie Bunker. And he said, yeah. And we started talking. I knew this guy. And I said, what are you doing here, Eddie? And he said, I adapted the screenplay. Now, I didn't know what that meant, but I guess it was important. And he said, are you still boxing? I said, no. I'm 40 years old. I don't want to get in the face anymore. And he said, we need somebody to train one of the actors how to box. And I said, what's it pay? Because they were giving me $50 cash. And he says $320 a day.
He said, I'll take it.
I said, how bad do you want this guy beat up? I thought he wanted me to beat somebody up. I'd have done it for another $50. And he goes, no, you got to be careful. This actor's real high strung. He might sock you, Danny. I said, for $320, give him a stick. And I started training Eric Roberts how to box for a movie called Runaway Train. And the director saw me, saw that I could handle Eric. I went from being Hey You to Mr. Trejo. Would you like some coffee?
And now fast forward, you're one of the most recognizable Latino actors in Hollywood. You starred, of course, in the movie Machete, which had Latino representation both in front and behind the cameras. But Hollywood is often criticized for not having enough productions about the largest ethnic minority in this country. Where is the disconnect?
You know what? I'm going to tell you something. Okay, we got plenty of Latino actors. Only problem is we don't have enough Latino executive producers. So they're the people with the money. Everybody keeps, blaming like different, we need people with money to start saying, hey, let's produce some movies. Let's invest some money in film. And
have you thought about doing that yourself?
Absolutely. I've produced a few movies. My son did a film called From a Son, and the best work I've ever done and the most emotional. And so we've been trying to work up movies that feature Latino, not just, I don't want to, we have a Telemundo to do that, but I want to make movies with a lot of Mexican Americans, and not just, we got TV series that's awesome, but I don't want them just to be bad guys. We could have like instead of a James Bond, we could have a Juan Sanchez.
Juan Sanchez, I like that.
I'm Juan.
It sounds very tough. I'd like to see you play that role, Mr. Sanchez. And on a lighter note, according to multiple reports, you actually own the record for most on-screen deaths out of anyone in Hollywood history. Is there a particular scene that sticks out to you as a favorite or most memorable?
To be killed by Robert De Niro is probably the highlight of my movie career. When in Heat, I asked him, don't leave me like this, Holmes. And he puts me out of my misery. Everybody said that was one of the best scenes of that era, And I remember talking to Bob. I love saying that. I remember talking to Bob De Niro before, and him asking me, how do you want to play this, Danny? And I said, I don't know. What do you think, Bob? And he said, I think you're already dead. And I kind of looked at him and said, you just got enough life left in you to beg me to kill you.
Got it. And it worked. It worked.
Oh, it did. He knows what he's talking about, man.
Danny Trejo, we thank you so much for your time. And to our viewers, remember Danny's book, Trejo, A Life of Crime, Redemption in Hollywood, is out now. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
You also. And before we go tonight, our image of the day. Take a look at that sandcastle. This is the world's tallest, to be exact. It's being constructed in a seaside town in Denmark. It weighs nearly 5,000 tons and towers more than 65 feet. Hopefully that is not impacted by any rain. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. And coming up in the next hour, we're staying on top of several things. The concerning spread of the Delta variant. The officials in hard-hit states urging Americans to get vaccinated. And what can be done to prepare as storms are starting to come earlier in the year and they're getting stronger. Our Ginger Z has this week's It's Not Too Late.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. Tropical storm Elsa continues to make its way up the eastern seaboard, bringing torrential rain and strong gusty winds. Tropical storm warnings have been extended up to portions of New Jersey as Elsa is expected to hold its power as it churns north. Possibly 2 U.S. citizens are among the detained in connection with the assassination of Haitian President Moise, according to Haitian officials. Police also killed 4 other suspects who they say were all foreign nationals. The interim prime minister says the murder of the Haitian president will not go unpunished, but continues to ask the public to remain calm. The U.S. has yet to comment on the reports of the arrested Americans. A total of 64 deaths have been confirmed from the condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. The Miami-Dade mayor says 76 people remain unaccounted for. Samples of the concrete from the collapsed building are being taken to compare it to its sister building. Soil analysis is also being done. There's still no set time frame from the recovery, but they're expecting to progress at a faster pace. Now to alarming news on the coronavirus. Health officials are calling the rapid rise of the highly transmissible Delta variant troubling. The variant is now the dominant strain in the U.S., targeting mostly unvaccinated Americans. In Utah tonight, which is a state that's seeing a troubling rise in cases, officials there have a rather unambiguous message. They are saying at the end of the day, vaccination is the answer to all the challenges. Stephanie Ramos reports.
Tonight, health officials are warning the Delta variant is spreading faster than expected throughout the country.
Although we expected the Delta variant to become the dominant strain in the United States, this rapid rise is troubling.
In southwest Missouri, just 6% of ICU beds are available. Teams inside Mercy Hospital are treating patients who are younger and sicker and mostly unvaccinated.
This is the absolute worst that I've ever seen it. There's people saying that they are comparing us to New York about a year ago.
In nearly all U.S. counties with the highest COVID rates, less than 40% of residents are vaccinated. The Delta variant now behind 80% of cases in parts of the Midwest and Plains.
I'm gonna need your help on this one just a little bit.
Officials in Colorado linking at least one outbreak to last month's Country Jam Festival in Grand Junction. And outside New Orleans, the number of COVID patients at one hospital tripling in the last 2 weeks, all of them unvaccinated.
And so people are out and about going and eating and traveling, which is totally understandable. And you put in a new variant with poor vaccination rates, and it's a recipe for disaster.
Back in Missouri, Trisha Jones's family encouraged her to get vaccinated.
We were just like, Mom, please just go and get it.
But her family says she chose not to get the vaccine and died of the Delta variant last month.
I was actually one who felt her last actual breath. One without the ventilator.
Lindsay, Pfizer is out with an update tonight saying their data shows 2 doses of the current vaccine work well, including against the Delta variant, but that a 3rd booster dose would work better. So they plan to ask the FDA to authorize a 3rd dose of the original vaccine to be administered 6 to 12 months after the 2nd dose. It'll be up to the CDC and FDA to decide. Lindsay.
Stephanie, thank you. No spectators allowed. That was the announcement today by the minister of the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games. An Olympics dream dashed yet again for ticket holders. ABC's James Longman has the details.
Tonight, an Olympics like no other. For the first time ever, fans will not be allowed in the stands to watch the Games in Tokyo. A rise in COVID cases pushing Japan's prime minister to announce a state of emergency in the city. It came just hours before the torch was due to begin the last leg of its trip to the opening ceremony in 2 weeks. Tokyo's COVID numbers are relatively small, under 1,000 daily cases in a city of almost 14 million. But the surging Delta variant and the poor vaccine rollout has authorities worried about the potential for serious outbreaks. And just 15% are fully vaccinated in Japan. Compare that to almost 50% in the US and Britain. There's been serious public opposition to the Games, even though around 80% of the athletes and journalists arriving will have been vaccinated. But the cost of cancelling for the International Olympic Committee is just too high. Some estimates say they'd lose as much as $4 billion in TV revenue, the bill for the Japanese as much as $17 billion. Even locals watching on TV will be impacted. From Monday, bars and restaurants will be banned from selling alcohol and must close by 8 p.m. to limit the spread of COVID among fans. The rules in place till August 22nd, well after the Games end.
A lot of limitations in place. James joins us now. James, you're about to head over to Japan soon. What more can you tell us about some of the restrictions just in advance of the Games?
Well, Lindsay, I think the biggest difference you'll see is that there are no spectators in any of those stands, as we were hearing there. That is going to be strange. As it goes for the state of emergency, well, Tokyo will require all bars and restaurants and karaoke parlors to close down at 8 o'clock. They won't be able to serve any alcohol. The idea really is to stop people coming together to celebrate watching the Games. They want people to stay at home to watch on TV. I have to say, though, we are all wondering what it's all going to be like when we go there, journalists, anybody really entering Japan, because the restrictions really are piling up on us. I mean, I can tell you that we have to get tested every day for 3 days before arriving in Japan. When we get there, we're tested at the airport. I'm then sent to the hotel where I've got to spend 3 days in total isolation. I then get tested every 4 days after that. We're not allowed even to go into Tokyo proper. We have to remain in the Olympic bubble. For the athletes themselves, they have to come into the country. They go through all that as well. They can't mix with anyone else. They're not allowed to speak to any Japanese people out and about. And they have to leave the country within 48 hours after they compete. So, I mean, this is just really going to be a very, very strange set of games. But nevertheless, we're all trying to look forward to it, see how it goes. After those 14 days, by the way, the Olympic Committee and the Japanese authorities will look at how things are going, watch to see whether this Delta variant is really starting to spread, and then they'll make a decision about whether or not journalists, athletes, others are able to venture out of that Olympic bubble and go and see Japan. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will. An Olympics unlike any other. James Longman, our thanks to you. And back to Elsa now. And the early season storm battering the east tonight. Is this type of storm the new normal? And what can communities do to make their coastline more resilient as climate change is altering the hurricane season that so many have gotten used to? Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z has this week's It's Not Too Late.
I'm Ginger Z, and it's not too late. Welcome to the Rockaways here in New York. So I'm on a different beach, the surf kicking up. It's a different morning, but I'm still talking about the same tropical storm. You know, I started this week covering Tropical Storm Elsa in Florida. That Gulf of Mexico does not usually look like that. It is known for being peaceful, but not this morning, as the water still behind the storm is pushing into these channels and bays, squeezing together. We still have a considerable chance at some flooding. Elsa, not a remarkable storm because it's epic or will be historic by any means, but because it started so early. Elsa is the 5th named tropical storm of the season. It's the earliest we've ever done that since we started naming storms back in the 1960s. So that makes it different, but the other thing that makes it different was its proximity to Tampa. Tampa hasn't had a direct hit in more than a century. Thankfully, they didn't get it again, but even when a storm parallels them, they can see major flooding.
And ABC's meteorologist Ginger Z starts us off from the floodwaters of Florida. Good evening, Ginger.
George, it has been a non-stop rain for hours. Look at people with boats abandoning their cars and now even their homes. The bad news is Debbie isn't done.
That That was Tropical Storm Debbie in 2012. And then last year, there was Ada.
I've never seen this. Never, not this deep, period.
Elsa's path was eerily close, but a good reminder that the luck can't last forever in Tampa.
Tampa Bay is incredibly low-lying, and we have a lot of real estate that's been developed right here along our coast, and so we're incredibly vulnerable to even small amounts of storm surge like that 3 to 5 feet.
And then on top of that, sea level rise. I saw a report in 2013 that said Tampa is one of the top susceptible to flooding in the globe.
Yeah, and that a lot of that comes from the fact that we put our homes and our businesses really close to beautiful Tampa Bay. It's so great. This is what we want to enjoy while we're here. And unfortunately, that means sometimes we're at risk for flooding. That means during hurricanes, and in the future, that means things like sea level rise and sunny day flooding can affect our properties as well.
While I was in Florida, I talked with Maya Burke. She is the assistant director of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. See, they're a group that are planting habitats along the Tampa coast to help protect everybody from storms when they happen.
There are things that we can do in this area that can help protect our community from future sea level change. One of the things that we believe in here in Tampa Bay is that green infrastructure is a really important tool. So it's not just about pipes and pumps and getting the water out as fast as we can, but we want to plant habitats that can protect the coast from wave action and things like that. But also, coastal habitats are really excellent at storing carbon and mitigating the effects of climate change. So planting this beach area with marsh grasses, with mangroves, with oysters, with seagrasses, that all stores carbon in the environment. And if we can protect it, then it stays there.
Back here in New York, we are still tracking Elsa. And if you remember from our oyster feature, New York has implemented a similar approach. They're restoring and replanting oysters in the Hudson.
New York Harbor used to be one of the great ecological treasures of the world. And we destroyed that by harvesting all the oyster reefs. And we think that by restoring oyster reefs to the harbor, we can restore that lost habitat.
Using nature's engineers to help protect the city from storms. So the surfers trying to get a little bit in with that high surf kicking up, but you will not want to be out here Friday morning through Friday night into New England. The tropical storm warnings go all the way up through Boston. And yes, this is early for us to be this deep into the season, but it is never too late for us to talk about protecting ourselves, learn about how we can adapt, and talk about how we can deal with these extremes going forward. I'm Ginger Z, and I promise it's not too late.
Always reassuring to hear that it is not too late. Our thanks once again for Ginger for that. And now to the latest on the battle over Britney Spears' conservatorship. Her mother is now weighing in, asking the court to listen to what Britney wants. Here's ABC's Kaylee Harta.
Britney Spears' mother standing up for her daughter as the pop star fights to regain control of her life. In new court documents obtained by ABC News, Lynn Spears telling the court it's mandatory to allow Britney to hire her own private attorney or to have the court appoint an attorney Britney chooses before addressing the termination of the conservatorship. The petition saying Britney's capacity is certainly different today than it was in 2008, and conservatees should no longer be held to the 2008 standard, whereby she was found to not have the capacity to retain counsel. Hiring her own attorney was among the requests Britney herself made to a judge during her bombshell June 23rd appearance. Britney then telling the court, "I truly believe this conservatorship is abusive," and saying, "I just want my life back." After that testimony, members of Spears' conservatorship, including her longtime manager Larry Rudolph and court-appointed lawyer Samuel Ingram III, resigning. And Britney's conservator of person, Jody Montgomery, says that since that hearing, she has received messages that threaten violence and even death. Additional court documents obtained by ABC News showing Montgomery is requesting more security be hired to protect her.
And still to come, 1 year since the tragic death of Glee star Naya Rivera. Her family is opening up tonight about her disappearance and legacy. And the NBA player pushing to bring a championship not just to his team, but his entire Caribbean country, who is cheering his every bucket.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
There once was a housewife.
Erica Jane.
The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Who married a hustler.
Tom Girardi was LA Law. So powerful.
They were just blowing money left and right. But then...
The Real Housewives star accused with her husband of staging a fake divorce.
Thomas Girardi accused of embezzlement. People love a good scandal.
The biggest question is, did she know?
The Housewife and the Hustler. Only on Hulu.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues, The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3. What you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about.
Fuel.
This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're tracking several international headlines at this hour. President Biden announced that he is moving up the U.S. military withdrawal date out of Afghanistan to August 31st. During his presser, Biden said our military did not go to Afghanistan to nation build. When pressed about reports from the intelligence community saying the Afghan government will fall within months of U.S. withdrawal, the president said it was not true. The Vatican announced today that Pope Francis had a fever 3 days after intestinal surgery. Pope Francis, who is 84 years old, had half of his colon removed on Sunday. Doctors have said a fever could indicate evidence of an infection or other complications. However, the Vatican statement stressed that the fever was temporary and that Francis's treatment was progressing as planned. Rapper Lil Baby and NBA star James Harden caught in hot water in the city of Love. French authorities detaining Lil Baby and one other unidentified person for allegedly transporting drugs. Harden was also stopped and frisked but was not detained. The pair was in Paris for Fashion Week. Authorities say the investigation is ongoing. It's been 1 year since the tragic death of Glee star Naya Rivera. Now, for the first time, her family is opening up about what they describe as their moments of hell following her disappearance and what they hope her legacy is. Our Juju Chang sat down with them.
Naya Rivera was a triple threat talent on Glee. She could act, she could sing. And boy, could she dance. But on July 8th, 2020, everything would change.
It was a beautiful morning. I missed 2 of her FaceTime calls, and I called her back, and I said, Naya, where are you? She's like, oh, me and Josie were gonna go to the lake, and I was gonna have them fish.
And do you remember what you said in those final
FaceTime I told her, I go, well, the water's getting choppy. And I said, I love you, and call me. Call me when you get off the water.
Yolanda talked to her daughter from that rented pontoon boat as the devoted single mom set out for adventure on Lake Piru with her son. But hours later, the then 4-year-old Josie was found by another boater, asleep, adrift, alone wearing a life vest. Naya was gone.
He told us, he said, don't worry, we have Josie, but your daughter's missing. And it was almost like a force. I don't know what it was, but I was just pushed backwards, just screaming.
For 5 grueling days, rescue teams searched day and night, the Glee family holding vigil lakeside.
We saw people holding vigil, people holding hands, sending prayers. What were those days like for you guys?
Those first 5 days were
hell.
Awful.
Hell on earth.
Hell on earth. My faith told me that nothing is missing, surely not a person. Yes, we just can't find them. So that was my thing. God, you know where she's at. Just bring her back to us. Thank God I took the pictures because they were able to look at the topography of the land to locate where they were.
You took screenshots?
I took screenshots of the FaceTime call.
Naya was found 6 days later. Investigators believe she managed to save her son, but then drowned accidentally. Her younger sister, Nikayla, moving in with the boy's father, the fashion model now helping to raise little Josie.
He literally asked you to come be with him and live with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew right when it happened and right when we got him, I knew the role that I had to take.
Now I see Josie, and it's almost like, it's so reminiscent because he's like a boy version of her in every sense of the word.
In what way?
Just his tenacity, his drive, his zeal, his adventure for life. He's Naya in boy form.
He loves entertaining.
Yes.
He loves singing at the top of his lungs.
From a young age, Naya was a force to be reckoned with. But her breakout role, Glee's Santana Lopez, an openly queer Latina.
Because all I want to be able to do is kiss my girlfriend, but I guess no one can see that because there's such an insane double standard at this school.
You know, I honestly don't think that she even knew the impact that she had. People would come up to her all the time and say, "You saved my life." My sister, even though she was acting, was touching people's real lives and helping them become who they really are and not being ashamed of that.
Today, Yolanda hopes that Naya's life leaves one lasting message.
I would like my daughter's, Naya's, legacy to be one that teaches people to love. Love who you are, because you don't get another life.
What a legacy. Our thanks to Juju for that. Finally, tonight, his Phoenix Suns won Game 1 of the NBA Finals over the Milwaukee Bucks. And tonight, DeAndre Ayton has an entire country behind him as he tries to bring back an NBA title to the Bahamas. Marcus Spears from our friends at ESPN traveled to the Bahamas to get a sense of what drives Ayton and how much basketball means to the island nation.
He should be recognized and appreciated by this country, and he should be used by this country to promote this country, because he is going to be the face of Bahamian sports for the next 15 years.
Growing up in the Bahamas was very amazing. No care in the world, to be honest, for me growing up. I had my friends, and I was just playing outside every day, going to school, walking home from school, and just playing every day. Nassau, Bahamas is a Christian island. I think everybody believes in God on this island.
Be with him, dear God. Strengthen him and his family. Amen.
What
was Nassau Village like growing up there?
I think growing up in Nassau Village was kind of tough. A lot of mischief around, just hearing a lot of fights, and my parents did a good job on just taking that away, keeping us out of that and not being involved with it, even though we were right in the middle of it. This is what I come to. This is what I come, oh yeah. We might ball this. Hey, out of all the hurricanes we've been through, this is the only thing that don't blow down. I dead serious. Hey!
This DeAndre, yeah? Andrew.
Tian.
And Tian. Mommy, we show you inside this room. His bunk bed still sit there. You can't figure it no more.
Once I in the village, I in the village.
What kind of memories you got here?
All type of memories.
Tell me about that court outside.
Oh, my dad made that court. Instead of going to the park all the time and little altercations over there, I was like, what? I said, Daddy, I need my own court, eh? So he built that one for me. And then that court.
All the guys have started come from that side.
Everybody who was at the park came to the court.
Yeah.
Basically. And, you know, I did disrespect it, to be honest. I don't think nobody ever stole the rim or nothing, huh? No. Yeah.
What does this trip mean for you, man?
I mean, it's huge. Just basically getting recognized at a young age. People didn't expect much from me, especially in school. I'm representing the nation in the best way I can, possibly, and myself. So, I mean, I don't really care what people think or say about me. I think that's why I'm here, where I'm at today. I don't care. Like, I know where I came from, and I know how to represent myself.
This young man come from a small little island, going to one of the biggest country in the world. And this young man make a statement, I'm going to be number one. Listen to learn. Good job.
Who introduced you to basketball?
My dad. I was at my dad. Then he talked about the camp with Jeff Rogers. And, you know, I came here. I knew it was basketball, but I didn't know how to play it.
When I look at him, I said, man, this guy can't even walk. I'm gonna play basketball. Because, you know, he was just tall and skinny. But there's one thing about him I noticed. He was one of those young men who wanted to learn.
How did this country make you?
I just say the pride we have. We have so much pride in it, in everything we do. We're not starstruck. We want to be that too.
Always remember that wherever you go, you will continue to represent the Bahamas. Remind the public that you are a son of the soil.
Always represent yourself in everything you do. Whatever your craft is, you want to dominate it. Dominate in your talent. My talent is basketball, so I'm dominating it.
Our thanks to Marcus Spears and ESPN for that story. Ayton told Spears recently, I'm trying to bring that Larry back to the Bahamas. Larry, of course, being the Larry O'Brien trophy that the NBA champions receive every year. Ayton and his sons will try and go up 2-0 tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, and you can watch the game on ABC. That is our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward fact.